questions at the shop about turbos and superchargers. We've been putting turbos and superchargers on Harleys for quite a few years. We are definitely not new to the game. And with that, we get a lot of questions about which one's right for me, what's the differences, and I'm going to kind of give you a quick, say, 100-foot overview of what the differences are, and maybe that'll help you decide which one's right for you. So if you look at a turbo, basically how it works is the turbo takes exhaust gas, channels it over a fan or an impeller, which spins a shaft. The shaft turns another fan, which compresses air down the cold side of the turbo and into the engine. So the exhaust creates more intake pressure creates more exhaust, creates more intake pressure, and that's kind of how it works. So as you increase load on the engine, with a turbo you can kind of short shift it. You don't have to rev it up nearly as high, and it will create a bunch of boost, and the thing will pull hard. Now, the difference in the way that they come on is this. So a turbo, typically when that thing comes into boost, it'll shoot for its peak boost pretty quickly. If you have it wide open throttle at any given gear, and this could be, say, 3,000 RPM, 4,000 RPM, 5,000 RPM, depending upon how the turbo's sized, it could come on in the 2,000 RPM range. It will typically spike for its peak boost when the throttle's wide open. By the time it's in the 2,500, 3,000 RPM range and above. So it will pull very hard in gear, and you don't have to downshift nearly as much. But keep in mind that with a turbo, you're directing the exhaust heat up and around through the turbo, and then running it back down out of the turbo onto the bike. So you do pick up some extra heat, or the extra feeling of heat, up on your legs and whatnot. Okay, but that's kind of the 100-foot overview on the turbo. Now, a supercharger, the difference in that, we offer ProCharger superchargers and TTS superchargers, and we do also offer turbos. But kind of the difference, the supercharger is basically just the cold side. It's a centrifugal supercharger, it's the systems we use. So it's basically the cold side of a turbo, and instead of the hot side being driven by the exhaust, on a centrifugal supercharger, it has a pulley on it. So that belt pulley spins relative to crank speed. So the crankshaft actually spins that, and via a belt or a couple belts, depending upon which system. And so the faster you turn the engine, the faster the compressor spins. The faster the compressor spins, the more boost it can make. So that's kind of how that works. So basically, the turbo, you get kind of a, what we call boost lag, or a little bit of delay as it goes in, and then the exhaust gas is filled, the turbine speed comes up, and then it comes into power and it pulls hard. With the supercharger, it's relative to crank speed. So if you rev the engine higher, it'll make more boost. So with a supercharger, it feels kind of like an all-motor combination, and it just pulls relative to engine RPM. So basically, a supercharger is going to feel like an all-motor bike, just with more power. Whereas a turbo, you know what's going on. I mean, you know that it's a little softer on the bottom. When you first touch the throttle, it's a little softer. It's a lot quieter. The supercharger's exhaust notes tend to be loud because you're artificially raising cylinder pressure, which means you're essentially raising compression. And the higher that pressure is, the louder the engine's going to be, when you're under heavy boost. So the supercharged system uses the standard exhaust, whatever exhaust you're running, whatever you choose to run. So it's going to sound like your bike always did, but a little cooler. The turbo is going to change the nature of that exhaust entirely. It won't sound anything like it used to. It'll have kind of a burbly rumble. To me, I always explain it as it sounds like a boat with underwater exhaust. It's just kind of a mellow rumble on a turbo. Whereas a supercharged bike sounds like your bike does. And the harder you rolling the throttle, you know, the louder the exhaust. The more open the exhaust, the louder the exhaust. But that kind of gives you a feel for the difference in the way they are. The other thing that I think is important to note is I mentioned earlier that a turbo will spool quickly up to its max boost, whereas a supercharger, its max boost is only at the top of the engine RPM. So if you're down below that, then it's not going to make, you know, say the system can make 12 psi. Well, it's not going to make 12 psi at 3,000 RPM. It's going to make 12 psi at 6,500 RPM. So kind of gives you a feel. It's very different in the way that they are, and they both have their perfect places, but they're not perfect for everyone. And they, you know, each system, everybody has a preference. Personally, for the street, I'm a supercharger guy, but that doesn't mean that turbos aren't great. On the race bike, I run a turbo, and it is faster than it was as a supercharged bike. But that doesn't mean that we can't make a supercharger as fast or faster, because it certainly can. So anyhow, hopefully that gives you guys some information, and that's the 100-foot overview for today. So, all right, y'all, take care, and never forget what's important.